broadcasting once again on tape for the State Library and the State Archives in Frankfort, for the Murray State University Pogue Library of Oral History. And we're also broadcasting for the Marshall County Library. This program is paid for by WCBL on a special grant in order to preserve the cultural history of Marshall County. Our guest on today's tape is Miss Lalah Lovett Ely, widely known to nearly all Marshall Countyans, I imagine. And we're at the Lake Haven Nursing Home. She's very alert, dressed fit to kill here during this holiday season. Looks as if she's going to a wedding or something. And she has some friends visiting. How are you, Miss Lalah?
I'm fine.
Very good. I'm going to start off with a question that sometimes gets men slapped for asking it, but would you mind telling me your age?
89.
89 years of age. Well, that is great. Now, you have some friends here. I don't know whether we ought to record them on the tape or not. We might call their names if you can think of all of them. Let's see, there's...
my roommate, Clement Finch, and the social worker, Chandra Panther, and then my guests are Dorothy Shamwell
Wagoner.
I couldn't think of the last
She's
name.
a Southern Harmony singer, so I know her. Yeah.
From Dixon, and Carolyn Smith from LaGrange Park, Illinois, who is a retired teacher.
Is that near Chicago?
And Maxine Bloom, who is dean of a school of 1,700 people at LaGrange Park.
All right, now we have the setting all finished here. We'll get down to the types of questions that the State Library would like for us to ask. In order to establish the genealogy, would you tell us the name of your parents?
John G. Lovett and Law Frizzell Lovett.
So your mother was a Frizzell?
Yes.
And Miss Lalah, do you remember anything about the Lovett history beyond that? Your grandparents, for example?
Well, I didn't know any of my grandparents, but the Lovett history does go back to the Revolutionary War.
The American Revolution, well, you could be a member of the DAR.
Well, I have been.
You have been, very good. Do you know anything about where the Lovetts came from to Kentucky? Were they out of Virginia, North Carolina?
North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And is the Lovett name, is that English, Irish, Scotch, Welsh, or?
Well, I think that's English. I've never heard that discussed.
Mm-hmm. All right, an English background. It probably is. Now, where did you go to school?
Well, I finished high school here, and then I went to Randolph-Macon College in Lynchburg, Virginia, but just for one semester. I dropped out married.
The Lovett family that I remember was sort of around Olive, was it? The Olive community of Marshall County?
Yes, Jonathan Creek.
Uh-huh. Well, you know, I was born right in there, and so was my father.
Yeah.
So, and my parents are both buried at the Barnett Cemetery, which is near Jim Will Barnett's old store, and that's in a rock throw of Olive, I suppose.
Yeah.
Did you go to a one-room school in the elementary grades?
To what?
A one-room country school?
Oh, no. No. I've always gone to school here where we had 3 rooms. I started in 3 rooms. school building.
Well, you're one of the first people that I've interviewed that didn't go to a one-room country school.
Well, no, I didn't do that. We had 3 teachers, an advanced. Well, I guess first we only had 2, maybe the advanced and primary teacher. And my first teacher was Miss Molly Crease. The Crease name is familiar here,
Certainly.
too.
Do you remember any of your other elementary teachers?
Well, I remember Miss Molly more than any of them.
All right. What about high school? Do you remember any high school teachers?
Well, I wanted to be sure and wanted to tell this, that I've been to school with nearly every lawyer that ever practiced in Benton. I went to school who went to particular Joe Price. Yeah,
Judge Joe Price. Yes, I remember Judge Price.
Judge Price, Bland Cox, Lawrence Cooper. You don't remember W.M. Reeder, who died.
No, ma'am, I don't
He was
remember.
a lawyer, but he was a prominent lawyer.
The others you named, I remember.
I went to him. Nearly every lawyer that ever, but Dorothy's father was a lawyer, but he didn't. If he went to school, taught school, I didn't go to him, but my father taught school, and I didn't go to him either.
You were glad of that, I suppose.
Well, he taught before he married.
Well, very good. Your memory is certainly sharp today. What were these schools like? Do you remember them pleasantly, or did you hate to go to school?
No, I loved to. I don't think I just particularly loved to go to school, but when this argument came up not long ago about a whole day or a half day for kindergarten children, when I first started at school, I went at 8 o'clock in the morning and stayed until 4 o'clock in the afternoon with an hour off for lunch. And I never once thought that that was the thing for me to do. I accepted it as a child.
I imagine you were much better behaved than I, and I got a lot of whippings when I went to school.
Well,
did you ever have any problems?
No, sir. And I went to Tom Brown. Did you ever hear of Tom Brown?
I read a book called Tom Brown's School Days once.
Well, I don't think that's the Tom Brown that lived here, but the Tom Brown that lived here certainly had a reputation that you had to be obedient and keep quiet. So it might have been that just the name, but I was good then. But I never had the problems in discipline.
What was your favorite subject in elementary school? You like spelling?
Well, I don't know that I had any favorites. I like mathematics too.
Did you ever hear of a spelling bee?
Yes, but we didn't have them only in our own schools. We didn't have the count of the bees just like they do now. We didn't progress. Well, you know what you mean. If you miss a word, you go foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You turn you down. And
Yeah.
You have to go to the foot and be the old cow's tail.
Yeah.
You said. I remember some of those. Well, what kind of games did you play at school?
Well, we had, the playground was divided. We had a large board fence. I guess it was more, must have been more than at least 6 feet high, or between the boys' playground and the girls'
You couldn't play together?
No, sir. And we played hopscotch or jump the rope or,
Did you ever have hot pepper?
yeah,
Okay.
yes, we had that. And for a while we had mothers and daughters.
How did you play that?
Well, some of the older girls took some of the younger girls for their children and wrote letters. And I had some good letters from some of the older girls, from the one that was my mother. She has been long gone. But we always had something to do.
Did you ever play town ball?
No, I didn't play that.
What about Wolf Over the River? Sheep meat and no liver.
No, I don't think we
Don't
played.
remember that? Red Rover?
No.
Well, I guess it was a little bit after you had been out of school. All right. After you had completed elementary school and became a young lady and so on, did you court for a while?
Oh, yes. Some, little bit. But another thing that was interesting about elementary school, and this kind of was in between the beginning, to notice the boys and all, when Henry Lovett was another lawyer that I went to, and we had Congress every Friday night, and that was after the teachers began to come in after Christmas. Up until Christmas, the county teachers taught from July to Christmas, and then they had to renew their certificate to teach another year and to catch up, and forget to take the examination. They had to take the examination. They would come in here. Now that was when the good time. That was when the good times started.
You enjoyed that.
I enjoyed that, but Henry had Congress every Friday night, and it was carried on just exactly like Congress. And I remember that so many things happen now that remind you of what happened. Am I through?
Oh, just keep going.
So long ago, when not this last legislature, but the last legislature 2 years ago, I thought so much of that Congress Henry used to have when we were going. We had the pages, we had the whole thing.
Well, you get Shelby off on that, and he'll never quit.
And we learned a lot. It wasn't dull back in the old days.
You picked up parliamentary procedure and a lot of things.
We picked up a lot of things.
Do you remember your first date?
Well, not exactly. We didn't date at first. We just had parties.
Well,
Before we were allowed to date, we had parties, and I can remember. Then one of the boys, certain boy, would take us home each time, and usually we would go to Nelson's, and where they had tables in the back then, you know, and have an ice cream cone. That was our entertainment.
That was living pretty high on the
Oh,
log.
yeah.
Did you have a picture show here then?
No, the picture show didn't start until after I was married and had a child. I remember that I was put out once because of my child.
Baby cried and they threw you out.
He was just bad, I think. It was John Lovett. If you didn't even know John Lovett's too old even for Shelby. You don't know who he is.
Sure I do. And I know his brother, Wells Lovett's father, Joe Lovett.
Yes. You know. Yes.
Was editor of the Ledger over at Murray, among other things.
Yes. Well,
Married-
you know he died last May.
Yes, I knew that. Wells and I were on the Murray State debate team together, so
Yeah.
I knew him pretty well. All right, could you tell us anything funny that happened in your courtship?
Well, I don't know whether it would be so funny to anybody else or not, and it wasn't to me then, but I liked a boy that my parents didn't like. And I would slip around, you know, and meet this boy, and often my husband would come and get me for the other boy, you know, just come and get me.
That was before he was your husband.
That before he was my husband,
Yes.
pretending, you know, he was my date to help the other boy. Well, my brother was about 6 years younger than I was and started smoking way too early. And I was the first one to catch him smoking. My parents never did think a thing, but I smelled it, and I found out he was smoking. So we made an agreement that I wouldn't tell if Joe was smoking, if he wouldn't tell I was seeing the other boy out. And one day at the dinner table, then we all went to the dinner table every day. We were at the dinner table, and Joe got mad at me and told about me going with the other boy. So, tit for tat, I told about him smoking. And you can imagine how the dinner ended.
Yeah. But you did have family life coming
We
together.
did have family life. We came together every meal.
All right, when were you married? This is sort of a John Alden. Speak for yourself, John. Did you ever say that to him?
Well, no. We lived next door to each other all our lives, and he fell in love with me. One day when a crowd was going to Mammoth Cave on a trip, and he didn't go, but he was at the depot watching us leave. There were several of us, and when he saw me get up and go to Mammoth Cave was when he fell in love with me. And the very minute I got back, he started dating me.
Absence does make the heart
Well,
grow
I
fonder.
guess so, because I never thought about him. And
How long did you play the organ at the Methodist Church?
I guess just 10 10, 15 years.
I knew a long time,
Yeah.
All right, after you were married, did you have any children?
Yes, I had children. I had 7 children. I lost 3 when they were babies. And I have lost 2 since they have been married and left children.
What about any grandchildren?
I have 4, 5.
All right, what did your husband do, Miss Healy?
Well, I guess you'd say as a politician,
yeah.
wouldn't you, Shelby?
I'd say he was a master politician. Yes, he was. And well liked and well thought of and well known.
When I first came to know you, Miss Ely, and we, of course, I lived so far away, I never got to come to Benton much. We lived at Hardin. And 7 miles off, without a car,
Yeah.
and just sharecropping around here and there, and why, we didn't come to Benton very often. But after I moved to Benton and had a daughter, I started sending her to you to teach her some of the graces a young lady ought to possess, including learning how to play a piano. Now, how long did you have music students? Do you remember that?
Well, that would be hard to say because of my children. When they were little, I didn't teach, but then after they got larger, you see, I would teach. So off and on, it's been a long time. I do have a list of everybody I taught, which is over 500. I don't remember.
I know, I guess I thought more about it, but you'd have a concert over at the First Methodist Church
Yeah.
every year and show them off, and of course all the proud parents. I couldn't wear a vest lest I burst all the buttons off of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, another funny thing that happened, that one of Hattler Morgan had a little girl taken that was a good little pupil too, and then Hattler had this youngest child, Philip, who was quite a bit younger than the one that was taking lesson, but like a dutiful father, Hattler was always there when I had a recital, and he told me just not long ago, and at first they were long recitals. I'd let all the children play, every child had to play, and they lasted pretty long, and after Hattler's had played and he got tired, and he pinched the baby so as he cried and he could leave.
Get up and leave.
That's pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one of Miss Lalah's daughters worked for me when I was manager of the Benton Theater for some time.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
That was Winnie.
Yes,
That was Winnie.
yes.
I remember her quite well. I didn't recall that she worked for Shelby, but as I said, it was a long way from Hardin to Benton to me back then. Right, what was Benton like when you first remember it? Some of the stores or the judges, the sheriffs, any of the public men or so on, could just some reminiscing on your part about that.
Well, I can remember the buildings were about the same from the time I remember anything until they started building the dam. There were, as far all that time, there were 1,000 inhabitants, and then it began to grow. But I remember when they first, of course, we didn't have paved streets for a long time. I don't remember ever having anything but gravel streets. But of course and then when Albert Stroud and Goldsmith, and you remember who else, Shelby, was elected on town board, and
Cliff Treese was mayor.
and they built the
PWA streets.
the streets. Oh, and my father and J.D. Peterson and Mr. Putz Stilley and all those men they just all but collapsed. They just thought everything would go to nothing. Spending all that money paving streets. But it turned out better than that.
Were taxes pretty high then, and they were afraid they'd go up?
Well, I guess so, but I didn't hear so much tax talk then.
All right, do you recall anything about other little places in the county? What about Hardin? Did you ever go there much?
Oh, I just loved to go to Hardin. I had a good friend there, and I loved to go to Hardin. And my mother came from Birmingham, and I loved to go to Birmingham. And then they had showboats, boats that went up and down the river, and had
Birmingham was on the river, so they
Yeah.
stopped there.
They stopped there and had plays, and crowds from here would drive over in buggies to the shows. Sometimes we'd take a lunch and stop and have a picnic on the way.
You've said that your husband was interested in politics. Were you pretty interested in it?
Oh, yes, I heard it all. I'm still interested in it, but I can't keep up now like yes, I've heard politics all my life.
Did you think the millennium had arrived when women were allowed to vote in 1920?
Well, no, I wasn't that upset about that. I just voted.
Yeah. All right. Could you tell us something about medicine when you were young? Were there any particular maneuvers that your parents had you to engage in that kept you from getting sick? Any old-fashioned remedies or?
Well, the only thing I can remember is that they was regular routine at my house was a Stilly pill. Doctor.
A Stilly pill, that's Dr. Stilly.
Yeah, anybody nearly that remember Dr. Stilly will remember the Stilly pill. It was a sort of a purgative. And it would just make you so sick you'd think you were going to die.
Did you ever take Calamo?
Well, I guess that had calomel in it, but you always got better.
You had to or die, didn't you?
Yeah. Dr. Stilton was a lovable person.
I've heard of some say that disease didn't dare come around them because their mothers would hang a bag of asafoetida around their necks. Did that ever happen to you?
Well, no, I've heard that too, but I never wore it.
Now, Miss Dorothy over there is saying that she has warned them.
You have.
Yeah.
How about castor oil? Did you ever take castor oil?
Well, a few times. It's not been, I'm enough to know what it is and how it tastes.
You remember your first radio? Did you go to a neighbor's house to hear it, or did you have one in your home? About what time? Do you recall anything about that?
Yes, but I think that was a good while after I married.
Well, the first commercial station in America was November 2nd, 1920. So we didn't have WCBL on the air then. I know that. It didn't come till
No.
54, I believe it was, Shelby.
That's right.
I-
December 13th.
I don't remember that date. That's what I was afraid you would remember, ask me a lot of dates. And I can remember a lot, but I don't remember the dates.
Well, do you have any idea when Benton first got electricity? About what time?
Yes, sir, I can tell you. I'll have to think a minute. My little boy was about 4 or 5. That's been about 60 years ago that I remember, 62 or 3 years ago. And then it wasn't on all the time. They'd leave it on long enough, then they'd time for you to get your ironing done and a few things
Monday
like,
was wash day and Tuesday was ironing day?
yeah, something like that.
Wash day and Tuesday was ironing day?
Yeah, something like that.
Then they'd warn you, Dorothy says, by blinking the lights in the evening before they shut down at 10 p.m. That had to be bedtime. I guess.
Yeah. Yes.
Reminds you of the early theater. Well, I've heard them tell about Fate Cox having a little plant that opened in Hardin in 1912, and I've heard roughly that same story. That Monday was wash day, and they didn't start the plant till about dark. It didn't run during the daylight hours in Hardin, at least. And along about 6 p.m. on would come the light plant.
Yeah.
Run till 10, except on Tuesday, which was ironing day, and it would start at 12 o'clock noon that day.
Well, it was something like that here. I don't think it ran all night, every night.
Miss Margaret Heath, I believe, told me that she recalled you got the water system in Benton about 1929. Do you remember that?
Well, just about. I don't remember the date.
Well, Miss Lalah, our time is getting pretty short. But Shelby generally likes to ask a question or two along toward the end about what you think of Marshall County. Shelby, would you come in, please?
Yes, very simply, Miss Lalah, if you had your life to live over again, would you once again choose to make it Marshall County?
Well, I think would.
Well, good. We've asked everybody this question, and you're the same as the rest of them. They've all said
They
they
all
preferred
think it
Marshall
would. Well, I don't know
County.
where else I'd rather be.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Lalah Ely. Shelby McCallum and Ray Mofield have been with you. We've been doing this program in the series by the Kentucky State Department of Archives at Frankfort for Murray State University's Oral History Library, the Pogue Library on the campus at Murray, and with a grant from WCBL providing a copy to the Marshall County Public Library. That completes our program for today.